Nice. All right. Well, I think that wraps up topic one pretty nicely about anime and your history with that. So, Brent, what is your topic today?
So this is something that I was kind of discussing with a friend not that long ago, and it got me really thinking. But so my history with video games goes all the way back to the original Nintendo.
Mm.
I've either owned or played a pretty large majority of those systems. So the question was posed to me: what is your favorite video game console? Like, if you could just choose one, like the whole library is available to you,
Yeah.
but one console that best represents what you love in gaming, and whether it's a mix of nostalgia or just generally good games, what is
Mhm.
that? What is that console that if you had to almost desert island, like this is your one console for the rest of your life? What is
Mhm.
it?
Okay. So, my gaming history is a little different. It's not like I didn't grow up with NES, SNES, the Genesis, the Dreamcast, blah blah blah, whatever. Like, I played a Nintendo Entertainment System. I played Super Mario. I played Duck Hunt. It was at like friends' houses and neighbors' houses, stuff like that.
Sure.
The first console, well, handheld console and console technically, that I owned was a Game Boy Advance. That
Nice.
was the first thing I owned, and you mentioned this in the previous topic of a little game called Pokemon Red, which I didn't play Red, but I happened to play Silver.
Okay. Okay.
That was my first game in between second and third grade. Yeah, so that was the
I'm
that
so
was the
old.
first one. I knew that was gonna be there. Like, how do I
I
tiptoe
I
around?
played Pokemon Red in junior high.
That's what I was like.
No,
Okay, this is gonna
it's
be
okay.
fun
I've
later.
accepted it. I'm 170 years old. That's fine.
Oh boy. So that was my first like I own it console was Game Boy Advance and Pokemon Silver. As for console, my first console was the PlayStation 2. Oh boy, I don't remember when I got that exactly. I just know it was like around the holiday time that I got that. And then from there, it just progressed and went Xbox 360 and then PlayStation 3, and then obviously now the consoles and Wii and all that, jazz.
Sure.
Um, oh man, this is a tough one because the Xbox 360 was probably one I put the most time into, to be honest. But I don't know if it had the impact of either of those first two. Hi. Because on Game Boy Advance, obviously with that being my first
Sure.
I own it thing, like I spent so much time in Silver. I can't tell me how many times I started that over.
Mhm.
And it wasn't like I beat it. It was just like, let's try a new starter. Let's go, Totodile and then Cyndaquil this time or whatever. Because Elite Four, honestly, I sucked at. I could never get past those
You're
motherfuckers.
tough.
But yeah, I played that a lot, and then a little game called Final Fantasy Tactics Advance came along, and I instantly fell in love with that.
Go on.
And that was another one that I didn't get super far into, and never even beat until like years later on stream when it was on the Wii U, and I was like, I need to play this again,
Yeah.
and did that. But those were the two big ones that stood out to me. I mean, there was a lot of games that I played, like. Another one was Pokemon Ruby. Like I put a lot of hours into that too. And then you had all the random spin-off movie title games, I guess you could call them,
Yeah.
of like Incredibles and this and that and the other thing. So I mean, those two games specifically have a big impact in my life. But if I got to pick one like key system, I think I got to lean towards PS2 of just like the impact. And it's not even that I played like, I know you mentioned the whole library. I know there's a lot of people whose titles they call out are not the titles I call out, like Metal Gears and stuff like
Oh.
that. Like I've never played a Metal Gear at all.
What?
So I don't,
Oh
so
my
I don't know.
God. No.
I don't know the impact of
no.
that.
That hurts me.
Yeah. But the big ones for me are, it will come no surprise to you, I think, is Kingdom Hearts 1 and Kingdom Hearts 2.
Oh, sure.
Like, I love those games. I'm excited for 3. I have it on the shelf. It hasn't been opened. I'm waiting until I beat the remaining of the spin. I don't But I still need to beat the remaining spinoffs.
Sure.
Just Dream Drop and 2.8 thingy, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two games, like they like you said, they affected me as a gamer now. And then as well as crap, I had it and then it ran from my head. PS2, come back to me. This isn't the one I was going to call out, but the Battlefront games, Battlefront 1 and 2 for Star Wars, those were amazing. Another one I also wasn't going to shout out, but 007 Nightfire. I played a shit ton of that with friends.
Okay.
Crap, what were you?
Tell me about it. Tell me about the game.
Oh my god, I don't know. It just escaped my head completely. Okay, also another one, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I loved playing that in the arcade, and when that came to console, holy crap. Frick. I'll have to think about it. But yeah, PS2 I think would be the definitive one for me, just on like impact and playing it a lot.
Sure.
Yeah, but what would you like? What would you say would be yours? Like, I know you said you talked about it with a friend, so you probably have your answer locked. But
I do. So I actually had a really difficult decision to make when I came down. When the question, gun to your head, what's your favorite console? It came down for me between the Super Nintendo and the PlayStation 1.
Okay.
And the reason being, throughout the even to this day to a large extent, but the vast majority of my younger years, I was always a big fan of JRPGs.
Okay.
Final Fantasy 2/4, is the JRPG that kind of set things in motion for me. I had an older friend that like kind of showed me the ropes a little bit and about how it works, because I was still a little young at the time. I was still in grade school for sure, probably second or third grade when I started playing JRPGs. So like I wasn't cognitively grasping everything that was going on in these games, but I was able to get some enjoyment out of the broad strokes of the story, and just like battling monsters is a cool thing. So like the Super Nintendo is where my love of JRPG ignited, and there are so many great JRPGs on the Super Nintendo. You've got Final Fantasy 2/4 and 3/6. You've got Chrono Trigger, you've got Secret of Mana, you've got Earthbound. There was really a wealth of good JRPGs. ActRaiser was so good. Jeff, Frank, they start to make sense. Don't you start with me on, because JRPG plots make sense anyway. I'll fight you on that later. There was such a wealth of JRPGs, and honestly, probably some of the best JRPGs of all time exist on the Super Nintendo. So like, I want to say that it's that, but I keep coming back to the PlayStation 1, because not only did it have those JRPGs, it had Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9, which are all fantastic games. It had Suikoden 1 and 2. It had Chrono Cross. It had Parasite Eve. It had just a plethora of phenomenal JRPGs. I'm not just going to list them all out because I could go on forever. Don't get me started about Xenogears. That is a game that touches on every subject you can possibly touch on in a video game, and it's fantastic. But not only did it have all of those really great games, it also had things like Metal Gear. That PlayStation 1 kind of is the first system that broke just a little bit of my love of JRPGs and got me into playing other things a little bit more. Metal Gear Solid, Brave Fencer Musashi, which was it had RPG elements, but it also was it at the end of the day, it was a action game. You know, and it had Resident Evil on it. It had Silent Hill. You know, the PlayStation 1 is really where my the PlayStation 1 is really where my love for games kind of reached a new level, I want to say. Cuz it introduced me to so much more than JRPGs, cuz so much of me was playing JRPGs forever. I literally read Xenogears and set it up. Oh my God, Hojo, that's a whole nother story that I could talk for an hour and a half about. We won't go there. I had some weird friends. Let's just leave it at that. But yeah, no, like definitely that's where things started to break off for me, and I started to fall in love with other genres and other things about video games, and it was definitely the PlayStation that really took that off for me.
Nice. So, what if you had to pick like a couple shout outs, maybe like not even just like the top ones that you mentioned, but just in general, like this game from this platform really was a good one, or this one, like your favorite games, I guess, per platform that you've played, maybe, perhaps, or just shout outs that you would like to give.
Wow. I mean, just going over the two consoles that I just talked about, definitely Chrono Trigger for the SNES. Final Fantasy VI is probably my favorite game of all time. There's just no other game that's like it. It does so many things that are so forward thinking and tells a story that still to this day I really don't feel like has been done as well as Final Fantasy VI did it. You know, I guess spoilers for a game that came out 20 plus years ago at this point, but like Final Fantasy VI is the first game that I can think of that tells like a coherent story where the bad guy wins. Like halfway through that game, you go up onto this floating continent so you can stop the bad guys from gaining all of this power to take over and destroy the world. And you get up there and your whole team loses. You lose and you escape the floating continent like by the skin of your teeth, and then your whole party's thrown to the wind and everything is miserable, and then the whole world is literally destroyed. That's the midpoint of the game. Wow. There is a whole second half to that game at that point, and it like I was just mind blown because like every story that I ever played was, oh, you just go beat the bad guy, and then you win and everything's safe and everybody's happy. No, like the second half of this game is people trying to pick up their broken lives. There's a whole village of orphans because all the parents in this village died, and like one of your party members is doing her best to like keep these kids from dying. Like that's kind of the tone of the second half of that game. Like the main character attempts suicide at the beginning if you do things wrong.
Yikes.
So it like for a young Brent, you know, again back in grade school at this point, that a lot of that kind of went over my head a touch, but you go back and play that now, it's like, this is dire. Just how bad all of this got. It's so well done. But yeah, I guess beyond that, when it comes to, I mean, other shout outs for other consoles, you know, you've got the PlayStation 1. Parasite Eve is one of my all-time favorite games. Ooh, excuse me.
Okay.
Parasite Eve was just it took like that Resident Evil, Silent Hill zeitgeist of survival horror, but then added in like an element of RPG to it, which was just really unique, and it was so well done, and the story was interesting. That game is one of those games that like almost yearly I'll go back and beat. That's just such a great game. And then of course Metal Gear on the regular PlayStation. That game is a treasure still. Kojima cemented his legacy in one fell swoop like that.
Very nice. All right. Well, that was a good one. Yeah, I think it. I don't know. I guess it was Marvel 2. That was the other game. I don't know why I felt like it just popped out of my head like it was something different. I mean, there are other games for sure that I played a lot of, but I think just because Marvel 2 had such a impact on me and
Sure.
fighting games and loving it, and then memories of my dad playing in the arcades and not knowing what we're doing and mashing everything, but it was just a good old time.
Are you ready for this whole podcast to come full circle?
Sure.
So on Netflix right now, there's an anime called High Score Girl that is like exclusively about a young girl and a young boy who meet by playing fighting games in Japanese arcades. And like
Let's go!
They take actual footage from like Street Fighter 2 and Darkstalkers and like all of these really old classic fighting games and like treat them with a lot of respect. Like when Guile's doing his turtle, like that turtle strategy, like they address that and explain it in the show because it's important.
Nice.
It's that's my full circle moment, because if we're gonna talk fighting game, I gotta talk about High Score Girl. It's so good.
Okay, all right. Put it on the list.
Yep. Write it down. I'll send you over 60 or 70 recommendations for your anime pleasure.
I'm ready. All right.